I would like to extend my appreciation to the Moya University for this opportunity to share with all of you today, with special assistance from our techie geniuses, Mike, BL, and Rose, and of course, all of you who have taken your valuable time to participate in this group work. I want to congratulate everyone who has come to participate in this presentation. And as the opening congratulations says, you're all still here. We're currently, and I know most of you are familiar with this, but we want to create a nice foundation for some important shares later about our solar logos. But we are in this solar maximum where we're getting these coronal mass ejections directly. And they come cyclically every 11 years, but we're in a very high sort of interlude between October 5th and the 9th, October 10th and 11th. And actually, it has decreased in potency a little, but it's happening also right now. And we know that the shift in the sun's poles happen relatively every 11 years. And during these shifts, the normal polarization of the sun is able to receive powerful energies coming from outside of our system through the sun in its three aspects. And this also is true of our own planetary magnetic shift, which is now occurring. And they can determine this by the strength of the planetary magnetism. And when it gets weaker and weaker, that is a forerunner of the planet getting ready to make a major shift. And we're going to explore what DK says about our planet Earth shifting. And they say it happens every 300,000 years, and it may not totally shift for many years to come, but it's shifting enough that we can get the download of all of these solar energies that the solar logos is taking in and then distributing to all the planets in our solar system. Now, we have to remember, and we're going to explore this, that our solar logos, our sun, is potent on three basic levels. Etherically, where these radiations pour down and they cause changes in the etheric body. They create changes in the human constitution, and even, according to some authorities, the DNA of our bodies. And all of this pressure on the personality on this lowest level stimulates the elemental life to be released in negative and undesirable ways. And that's why the world conditions are pretty dire right now. And it's not just our solar logos, as we will explore. It's other systems out there that are pouring their energy through our sun, through the etheric, But I can remember when I was a child, I could go outside and lay in the sun all day, and and it was nothing. Now, if I go out and am exposed to the sun, it's much more potent. The filtering effect that the planet normally would have has been broken down, and you have to watch physically how this sun will affect you. And I understand this is common sense, but it also, on an etheric level, on a physical level, it can affect all kinds of instruments electronically, the internet, the information highway, satellites, and then you have the next level of our solar logos, which is the heart of the sun. And in compensation and in greater potencies, the sun right now is open to the downpouring from cosmic forces outside of its rings past naught down through its heart center and then to the heart center of uh, hierarchy, humanity, and literally everything in manifestation to some degree, because at the very heart of every atom, irrespective of what that atom is, there is potential heart energy seeking to be released. So you have the physical etheric, you have this download of powerful heart energy. And if you haven't felt pressure or some discomfort on the lower octave of the heart center, which of course is the emotional body, uh, you're a very high initiate, or it's helping you work out certain dispositions that karmically are preventing the full potency of this hard energy to come through. And then we have the third aspect of deity coming through the sun, which is the will of the Father, the supreme destiny of all material existence and the destiny of the heart. So that is basically just a few opening statements that we want to go into. And here's a sort of a technical aspect of these magnetic storms. They create what are called ropes of charged plasma. And these ropes usually just collapse back upon themselves onto the surface of the sun. But sometimes they snap, which is what's happening now, and they slingshot these highly charged particles out into the solar system. And they create all these disturbances that we just spoke about.
Dwayne,
Yes.
I just want to say Nisa has her hand up.
Okay. Do you have a question, my dear?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think that this is the first solar maximum since our solar system entered the photon belt that goes around through the Pleiades around Alcyone. And
Excellent.
I'm suspecting that all those, as we enter deeper and deeper, that our sun is going to be, affected uh, by that, all the photons in the photon belt. That's all. I was just thinking that.
No, thank you for that important addition. And we are only covering here just one aspect of many astrological influences that are operating upon us. And we're going to get into that a little further. So this is where we're at. And with this high current of activity, the scientists are predicting that we're going to get a few more of these G4 events between now and 2025. And these geomagnetic storms, as most of you already know, are creating auroras as far south as Arizona and Texas. And if you missed the show, as the commentary goes on to say, yeah, good news, more of these G3 are predicted to come between now and 2025 and beyond. Okay, so here's just an image that demonstrates that wrapping around effect where it flows out and then it's absorbed back in. And when it breaks, it goes directly to whatever is in front of it astrologically, and we are dead center right now astrologically to these different effects. Now, this is an interesting statement by DK that was made in 1942, where he said, "The moment of opportunity which is upon us, this is the result of certain astronomical happenings, such as the pouring in of energy from a new sign in the zodiac and the shift of the Earth's pole." Once again, not wanting to be redundant, but what is happening to the sun is also happening to the planet. Now, are there any astrologers here who would like to share with us what they think is the pouring in of energy from a new sign in the zodiac? Is that like the 13th sign, or is it just the potency of one that's already there that's becoming radioactive? I apologize for not knowing this minutia, but it is important. If there's a new sign in the zodiac, and most of you know that Orpheus isn't a lot of people claiming that's the 13th astrological sign. If you look at astrology from a slightly different point of view, I don't know the answer to that, but who can never come up with that, please share it
Okay.
with us. Yes.
Um, I just wanted to say that I don't recall right now, but let me see if I can do a little research while you're talking, and then Joe has her hand up. So, Joe, go ahead.
I wanted to say, Duane, I think the emphasis in that quote might be on the energy going into a different sign rather than a new sign. It's true that Ophiuchus is there, but it's always been there, and we don't want 13, we want 12.
Ah,
So I'm
complicated
thinking
enough, hey?
it's coming into Aquarius, but you could go either way.
Well, no, that's an excellent addition and explanation. Okay, so again, we've reviewed some of this material before, but it's important as preparatory to additional things we're going to share. And these energies affect everybody, all the kingdoms, the tiny atoms in the chair you're sitting in, your very body. And these are several of the most important, with the Great Bear, Sirius, Pleiades, Draco, and the star Betelgeuse and Antares. We got to keep in mind that although all these cosmic influences distribute different ray qualities, they all, in their higher expression, embody some aspect of divine will. A principle that is working for the first time historically and is now synthesizing all the 7 ray qualities into something unknown that's coming into our solar system. I find that this is an interesting statement because we think of the 7 rays as 1 through 7. We study them exhaustively. But in certain quotes, which I think I have coming up, DK explains that this new cycle of the 7th ray, in addition to other forces, is taking all these 7 rays as we know it, and it's synthesizing them from the potency of these great lives that are way out there and are a part of the connection of our solar logos. Now, just to give you an idea, DK talked about Antares and Betelgeuse. I want you to look at the size ratio. Now, in all sincerity, size is not the only factor. Look at Sirius. We know it's our prototype on a sort of a second ray level, and you can barely see it. And our sun is not even as big as a speck of dust. But imagine the energy that these stars generate. It's really incomprehensible. And the numbers are just staggering when they run the numbers on these different sized solar logoi. And the Betelgeuse is doing some very odd things right now historically. It's getting brighter and then it's getting dimmer. And most authorities indicate that when a certain star of this magnitude is getting in a position to go supernova, that it acts in this way. Now, this is not to say Betelgeuse is going to go supernova next week or next month, might not be for 100,000 years, but it is definitely beaming out these very, very powerful energies that affect the second ray line of ascent into the Godhead, Betelgeuse. And I've added here, if you could put this up, Michael, in the chat box, this is a link that goes in to this idea of Betelgeuse and its rank and where it is in the hierarchy of things in conventional science. It's a fascinating outline and link. So if you could do that, Mike, that would be very much appreciated.
It's in the chat now.
Oh, you're so fast. It's embarrassing. Okay.
Duane,
Yes. Right.
I just
Go
wanted
ahead.
I just wanted to follow up. I was looking in esoteric psychology too, and the reference in there that you gave, I'm not so sure he's actually talking about an actual new sign. I think he's talking about Earth's movement into the sign of Aquarius. He
Thank you.
talks earlier in there about we are passing at this time through a transition period wherein old energies are passing out and new ray influences are coming in. We are transitioning into a new sign of the zodiac. Therefore, the impact of the new forces plus the withdrawal of the old is apt to produce clearly felt effects upon humanity as a whole and upon mystics and aspirants in particular, and cause definite reactions. With these, we shall shortly deal with when we consider the influence of the rays today in the Aquarian age. And
Excellent.
he's talking about this coming from the 7 rays in Destiny of the Nations. So, and then he goes into the passage and he uses that same, the energy of a new sign.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
I should have done more research on that.
That
But,
may be just one interpretation
oh
because
no, it's the correct
what
interpretation.
Joe said is valid, and he's also talking about the shift of the Earth's pole. And if the Earth's pole shifts, then the ecliptic, which is where the 12 signs of the zodiac are now, would shift. Um, and, and
Yes.
and then I also want to say that Susie has said, let me see if I can find where she said it. Um, if there is a new sign, it may occur with the predicted merge of Libra and Virgo, which was predicted by DK, thus retaining the 12 or the 6 polarities.
Yes, it's all about 12s, isn't it? And DK actually wrote quite extensively indicating why the zodiac is constructed around the number 12. And it's really, really quite interesting. Okay, so
We also
getting,
have a couple of more
oh
comments if you
no,
don't mind. Okay.
I please.
Okay, Francis says the avatar through the seventh ray bringing harmony through synthesis.
Yes, the avatar of synthesis.
And Asha asks, is there another name for the grand central sun, please? Is one of these names uh, the grand central sun?
Well, DK talks about the three aspects of the sun: the will aspect, the consciousness aspect, which and the central spiritual sun is usually referring to the highest aspect of the sun, the will aspect. Yes, so that's correct. The central spiritual sun, then the heart of the sun, and then the etheric sun. Thank you. Okay, any additional comments?
No, that's all we've got for right now. Thank you.
Okay, so we know radiations coming from the sun are visible light, infrared radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays. Also, DK talks about ultraviolet light, and we're going to be focusing on that a little bit as we continue. And would someone like to read this quote? Because it's very powerful knowing that the activity of these solar flares are bringing in huge downloads of ultraviolet light.
Greg, would you like to read that for us, please?
Sure. Mom's going to have to put her thing off so I don't echo.
Yeah.
Okay. Bring within our range of contact the infrared and ultraviolet colors. Quote, in speaking about the increased radiance of light seeping in from the etheric and astral planes, DK has this to say. The light from the astral plane, a starry radiance, and the light of the planet itself will be more closely blended, and the result upon humanity and upon the three other kingdoms in nature cannot be overemphasized. It will bring within the radius of our range of contact the infrared and ultraviolet gamut of colors. And I just wanted to say one other thing about that too. In terms of the treatise on cosmic fire, we talk about three kinds of fire. There's which is what Duane was saying in the previous thing about the grand central sun, represents, as I understand it, the highest form of energy, which is the electric fire, which is the fire of the will. And then we come to the second level, which is the solar fire, as the treatise on cosmic fire describes it, the fire of the solar fire, which is the fire of the Christ consciousness within us, but also in terms of the Christ energy within the sun. And then we come to the third level of fire, which is the fire by friction, which is in a sense, another form of energy coming from the sun. And all these planetary high energies are veiled through the sun as we would look at them in previous, well, in explanation. We've talked about it before, like sun, it's Vulcan at the very core level of the fire by friction, Neptune at the solar fire, and Uranus at the highest electric fire.
Excellent parallel.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that the majority of people in this group, if not all of them, have firsthand knowledge of these new and more ethereal contacts and colors. Now, it's not just, oh, I had a meditation, I had a download, it was very powerful, I saw colors, or I heard inner sounds, which is very important and very impressive. But this effect is actually going to affect the construction of the eye itself. In other words, between the etheric and the physical eye, there has to be built a bridge. And the sun, to go back to a previous comment I made, is actually reconstructing our DNA and our very biology. And if you want to look at a family with two parents, their offsprings, and then their offsprings, and then their offsprings, you will see evolution in progress, molding the form to support this new download of powerful forces. And there are older generations that have been working on these advanced areas, so they may have done the important preparatory, purificatory work, but a lot of younger incarnating advanced souls, they've already done this work to a large degree in a previous lifetime. And that's why our children and our children's children, they're the ones that are going to save the day. Now, that's not to say we aren't contributing in very important ways, but they come in with this sense of group life. And they come in because the coloring surrounding the planet is now going richer, more translucent, more transparent. In fact, I read a quote the other day where DK said, there is this very advanced group of monads who want to cycle in, who want to incarnate into the Earth sphere, but they're waiting for the coloring of certain groups and the planetary life in its totality to reach a certain purification. Now, I thought that was really interesting. So let's go back to the human eye. The human eye responds to light. It is an organ of light. You look at people, you can see light in their eyes. And another article I recently read was about certain women. Science has been able to prove that they can see colors, ethereal, mutated colors that most people can't see. And I found that fascinating because we live in an ocean of Davic and elemental life. And this range of inpouring ultraviolet, well, first of all, we see visible light in its 7 aspects in the middle of this little graph. Then to the right, you see where it says Devas and angelic kingdoms, ultraviolet range. All these studies that we have attempted to share and study relate to this new element called plasma. And plasma is electrical and a magnetic force that operates on a much higher level than what we can see visibly. However, to go back to the quote that DK just gave. If you're tuning in, if your meditations are being built correctly and you're doing the purification, you are going to move into a whole new range of tiny lives that are in this ultraviolet range. And this is why we have to put this in as much of a scientific language as we can, because as DK points out, the older Eastern phrases will no longer be necessary. All these, I'm not talking about mantra with sacred syllables and things like that, but a lot of the language of the East has to be reinterpreted here in the West. It's going to be the same energies. Energies are energies. 7 rays are the 7 rays, but they're going to have different, the formulas are going to be different. They're going to be more 7th ray rather than more 6th ray, more 5th ray rather than merely just 2nd ray, and this is an oversimplification because all of the rays are available to both the East and the West. Okay, excellent. So as you look at this chart on the where it says light weaver, you can see that a radio wave can take place the distance of a football field. When you get up onto the ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma range, you are talking about potency of a magnitude that only an advanced disciple or initiate is beginning to contact. And in addition to that, this is only the lowest aspect. When I say the devas can be contacted to the ultraviolet range, this is not the higher devas. However, if you can penetrate that, you can create a bridge all through the different initiations to these Devic and angelic kingdoms. Okay, any questions up to this point or comments?
Not that I see at this point.
Okay, we're going to get into a couple of short videos, but just before we do that, I want to reassert the importance of understanding that our relationship to the sun that you can see in this image, which is to the right and is sort of in red, and the planet Earth to the left, they are two vortices. And we only separate them because we don't have etheric vision or mental clairvoyance and clairaudience, but they operate through these interconnections that are in motion and vertical. And this is where the study of cosmic fire has had its least exposure or understanding. And however inadequately we try in this series, and I'm sure others are also doing it, indicate at least visually in some very tentative or preparatory way that fire by friction is rotary motion, like something revolving around an object. The consciousness or the love vibration, the second solar fire, it's cyclic spiral. And then, of course, the first aspect of deity is what is called progressive motion, which we can say in human terms is the shortest distance between two places. In other words, when you look at this Earth and this sun vortex, if you can imagine a thread of Fohat connecting the Earth directly to the sun, right at their cores, and then the vortexes, which is the spiral motion, it's the outer belts, the outer bands, the outer shroud. So I hope I'm not making this unnecessarily obtruse or arcane, because very important, as Plutarch said, very simple phrase, a great philosopher. He says, that which is dead is stationary. That which is alive moves.
Duane,
Okay, yes.
before you start the video, and no, you're helping bring this down. You're dumbing it down for those of us who don't understand all the scientific angles. So thank you for that. I wanted to say, Greg says the new photographic elemental processes that are allowing us to take pictures like the sundog we might see around the full sun, or the emerging and incoming orbs that come in around advanced disciples and initiates, is also being seen and actually photographically recorded for primarily digital photographs and digital cameras.
Excellent insight. And I don't remember if it was our last presentation or the one before, where we had a little video on the new computer graphics, the individual who was like doing this multi-dimensional 3D holographic, all in motion. I sort of forgotten his name, but that's correct. We are given new tools. In fact, I remember reading in a journal, a scientific journal, where a conventional scientist said, until the advent of computer graphics and animation, we were hindered in our ability to share with the public the beauty, the intricacy, the complexity of energy, force, the sun. So if there aren't any additional comments, we'll go right to the meditation. It's very short. However, what it will demonstrate our sun, which is what you're looking at here, has a north and a south pole. Energy pours through the center, comes out at the bottom, and then circulates back around. Although what we're going to see in the animation is just this wild foaming and agitation and flipping and churning of all the electrical influences that make up our solar logos on the etheric level. And they've been able to demonstrate this through very sophisticated machines. So even though this may be an artistic rendering, it's based on what NASA and some of these observing satellites have taken. Okay, so let's use this short meditation, and we have in the background the bell chant sung by Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, and Thay Phap Niem. And the chant is about bringing the cessation of suffering. That understanding comes from the heart, and that we can transcend the path of sorrow and death. So there's 3 levels that you can receive this animation. Physical etheric for vitality and personal healing, group healing. On a group level, bringing in the heart of the sun that we discussed, and the consciousness, vibration, and the will of the Father that will always direct us magnetically in the right direction. the mantra, the great bell chant, is very powerful. And the sun is a bell. It's ringing constantly, perhaps not as we mortals can fully understand, but it beams out a primary sound and then 7 subsidiary sounds, as we're going to explore here in a minute. And they could have a small parallel, however tenuous, down here on the physical plane. I mean, let's think of Pluto or Vulcan as like maybe drums, or harps and stringed instruments as being more second ray. I mean, I'm not very well versed in symphonic music, but all of those different instruments played in a certain cyclic sequence can be powerful, and it can move the emotions. It can open the heart center. It can also set armies warring against each other with drum rolls and cymbals. And of course, these are all oversimplifications, but DK talks about our sun in the 7 great breaths that it sounds and peals forth, not only as sound, but waves of color. And what are those? They are the 7 rays, but with particular emphasis on that great second ray, because even though our sun is what is called of the 4th order, and that's why Budai and yellow are very important colors, and the 4th ray note are very important, where it's in a second ray solar system. And so it has many facets. So this is what DK says about the 7 great breaths. The spirit or monad on its own plane sounds forth the note, his hierarchical note, and descends into incarnation. It is both the note of attraction and of outbreathing. The personality, the reflection of that monad at the densest point in evolution, is linked to the monad by the attractive force of the sacred word, sounded by its monad on its own note and on its own subtone. Okay, let's just stop there for a minute. And the group will recall how we went pretty deeply into the idea of the sacred word, that the monad is usually associated with the sound, the sacred word with the divine ego that the monad creates on the high mental plane, imbuing it with Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. And then, as DK says here, the densest point in evolution, which is us as personalities sitting here ruminating on these powerful quotes. When the personality finds for itself, after lives of stress and search, its spiritual note with the right key and subtone, what is the result? It accords with its monadic note. It vibrates to the same measure. It pulsates with the same color. The line of least resistance is at last found, and the indwelling life is liberated and returns to its own plane. If that isn't the most purest occult poetry. And so, you man, know thyself. It's one of the key opening statements of all esoteric schools throughout history. And why is that the case? Because when you know yourself, not just simply as a personal individual ego, but the three aspects of the personality, the mental note, the emotional note, the physical etheric note. When you find those, and you don't have to always know them to make progress on the path, it's just, it becomes more scientific, it becomes more potent. And one of the purposes of this series of presentations is to really bore down and give everybody, with of course their intuitive help, what they think these lower rays may be, what they think their soul ray may be, and construct advanced meditations that you can put together yourself using this information. This is what the hierarchy wants. Yes, any effort is good effort to bring light into the world, but when you can make it into a new superhuman physics, you are astronomically bringing in many, many times more light, not just in your own individual placement, but with the groups in which you work and the planetary entity. So,
Duane,
yes,
we have lots of comment,
okay,
and
excellent.
I just want to say, that quote, "Know thyself." I That was inscribed on the Temple of Delphi, and I also saw a version of that that just rang really true, resonated with me. And it was, "Know thyself, for in thyself is all thy need to know."
Yes, know thyself and you will know God is a shorter version of that, and that's excellent. And this is really powerful. I'm I recall Jung, who was one of my great mentors, and he said, "Those who look for truth outside of themselves will dream. Those who look for truth within themselves will awaken." And that is such a short, pithy, as MDR would say, mantra. If you're looking outside of yourself for something that's inside, all you're going to do is create one visionary, dreamy reality after another. And that's not to say we are entitled to daydreaming, because many revelations have taken place in so-called quote unquote daydreams. But when you take that observing mind and that physical eye and point it inward to the etheric eye, and you stimulate the pituitary, the pineal, all these higher head centers, all the centers up the spine, you will suddenly realize, as Rumi said, "Oh my God, if I only knew I was looking outside of something that was always already there." And we hear this all the time, but there's a personality recognition and the occult recognition. Okay, any additional comments?
Oh yeah, lots. Okay.
Good.
Susie says, brings to mind the lovely, this was the video, brings to mind the lovely seed, or the mantra, "The lovely seed head of the dandelion, a flower representing our sun."
Beautiful. Aren't flowers miniature suns? Think about it and how they unfold. Beautiful. Thank you, Susan.
And then Diana said of that mantra that it was the second ray sound, and you reiterated that. And Helio Soul says, "Could you please repeat this visual? A process needs to be completed, I feel."
Well, one of the thank you for that, and you're correct. One of the limitations of this work is that I try to condense a lot of information that can be researched later, and the videos should really be much longer because they're much more powerful. And I want to thank Mike for going into my website and posting one of these very long half-hour videos that will correct these shorter ones and make them more robust. Now, that's not to say you can't get a powerful download from a 1 or a 2 minute video, because you can. It's not always the length of it as it is the potency. But if I understand the comment that was just made, much work still remains to be done. And that's why we suggest at your leisure, you go in, you can pull these up, you can take any one of these animations and you can run them through a loop. If we looked at that last one for 15 or 20 minutes, that might be the end of the presentation. We'd all be so blissed out. And that's not the only purpose here, which is to contact these higher energies. It's to contact them and know they are demanding recognition through the lower mind. No doubt a contradiction. And I'm always criticizing the lower mind. But here I am right here talking through the lower mind. It's a paradox, and each one of us has to find the balance in what's going to work for us. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments?
Oh, yeah, lots. Okay, so Diana says magnetic healing technique is from healer's heart to patient's heart. Visualize the colors and sounds from the left and right eye.
Yes, that's the beauty of studying esoteric healing, is that all of the triangles, all of the relationships are clearly outlined, and it can give you a real foundation in this idea of superhuman healing, not just superhuman physics, but superhuman healing. And if just a small minority of people who live in the world understood these new healing techniques that the Tibetan and others have outlined, this whole COVID crises and devastation would have not been as severe, because the world largely relied on vaccines and inoculations. And I'm not in any way indicating that inoculations and vaccines aren't useful and haven't been used historically in a positive, beneficial way. But when we learn these new healing techniques that are outlined by DK, he clearly says that you can pull in higher energies and they're much more effective than vaccines. But I don't say this dogmatically. It's for all of you to do your own research. Next.
Okay, Michael Stacy says there can be many interpretations of the occult phrase, man, know thyself. And then Sam says, know thyself is a limitless call to introspection and self discovery. It encourages individuals to explore their inner landscapes, leading to greater self awareness, personal growth, and spiritual fulfillment. By embarking on this journey, one can live a more authentic and meaningful life aligned with their true essence.
That's beautiful, Sam. It is very poetic, and yet it's so entirely occultly, esoterically correct. Yes, we're unfolding out of ourselves, and that's a hard saying for the lower mind to fully understand. It might grasp the theory of it, but the lower mind, it can't enter into some of these higher regions. It can stand by waiting attentively for the lower download. In other words, when these higher potencies come down through the rays and the planes, they morph, they change, they become more material. And then at the bottom is the attentive, waiting disciple with their open mind to receive these gifts. And yes, the heart of it, the will of it was 1,000 times more powerful than what they could ever imagine in their lower minds or astral bodies. But there's a complete connection between the first ray, the second ray, all the rays, and the seventh ray working with the fifth ray. All the rays are represented. Any additional?
Okay, yeah, still a couple more, but in this theme, Jessica gives us a quote from Esoteric Psychology 1, page 348, that says, "Man, know thyself is a potent key to the knowledge of deity and to the workings of divinity."
Rumi, the great Persian philosopher, used to freak out everybody. He was the head of this great occult university that was renowned throughout Persia. And then one day he had an epiphany and a revelation and just said, it's the heart, it's love, it's unconditional love. And he used to go into the marketplace and he used to sit in the corner and his disciples would approach him and curiosity seekers and he would say, I am God. And that, of course, was blasphemy. How can some pathetic old dude sitting over there in the corner eating out of a rice bowl, how can he be God? But if you were to flip that and reverse it, and you were in the state of consciousness that Rumi was in, he's not talking about his personality, his body, his little ego. He's stating, I am God, just as you are God. And I've gotten a lot of criticism for looking at this from a position that breaks down the lower ego and lets in the light. And then when the light comes in, you're apt to say revolutionary things that are going to upset people, especially all the dogmas and all the historical trappings of all these different religions who want to keep you trapped. Anyway, sorry for the occult toot. Any
For the
additional
Iran.
comments?
Yes, yes, we got him coming. Susie says the lower mind is our child who imitates and is inspired by the wiser caretaker, the higher mind. Thus, rather than chastise it, let us, like a loving parent, teach it and love it and let it reflect our inspirations.
Beautiful. A mother will never abandon its child. And our mother is God. Father, mother, Holy Ghost, whichever way you want to look at it. Always nurturing, totally forgiving. Thank you, Susie. Beautiful.
Okay, that's it. We're at the end of the chats right now.
Okay, now we're going to see the same video we just watched with, well, no, actually it's not the same video. It's the video of the sun, but we're going to see the point within the circle of the sun. So this is more like the monadic expression, whereas the one previously was more along the second ray. This is more along the first ray. It's more dynamic. And when you watch this, keep in mind that we're going to jump back into a little sacred geometry here, that the sun is this nebulae, this morphing, flaring, circular being we call the solar logos. But out of that comes this intricacy, this intricacy of triangles. So what we're doing is we're seeing the logos in its first aspect with music, bringing forth the second aspect, which is divine geometry. And again, use it as a meditation, however short. It is very powerful.
Okay, hold it.
Okay.
Just as I said, there was nothing, Maria Christina typed, balancing the duality of the universal mind or higher mind with the lower mind brings illumination to the eternal Son of Mind, the ultimate
Beautiful.
synthesis, the soul.
Beautiful. the son of mine, which is the soul. That's beautiful. Thank you, Maria. Okay. Oops. I am missing a video. Not good. Let's see if it's not in the next box. There we go. Let's imagine this vibrating, pulsating, throbbing, symphonic, radiant with every colored hue, actually, when you take into consideration the 7 breaths. And out of this, this is where divine geometry emerges. And these platonic solids are semi-permeable membranes that are morphing and shifting. And all we're seeing is sort of a rigid example of this. And that's why I think in our previous presentation, it was so important to explore sacred geometry. Where does it come from? Well, in our system, it comes from the sun. And then it passes out to all the sacred planets. And then it's stepped down to the non-sacred planets. And every one of them has their sacred geometric signature. And if you recall the quote I shared a couple presentations back, that we come into incarnation, our auric fields have a certain quality of light, our sheaths, our chakra system, but also a quality of geometry. And when we pass out of incarnation, we take with us the upgrade, so that in the next incarnation, when the solar logos, well, let's say when the soul pulls together the 3 lower vehicles, it takes from the very essence that you left with in the previous incarnation. So in other words, there's perfect justice in the universe. You don't make progress, then you go out of incarnation, then you got to come back in and start all over again. No, you draw from the same reservoirs. When your inner bodies disintegrate, they and this relates to the permanent atoms and a lot of technical stuff we don't really need to know. And it's really, really a fascinating study. Now, the next image, you've seen both of these images many times. However, you may not have seen them both at the same time. Okay, you have at the left where it says the image that says Antakrana. You have the constellations, the creative hierarchies, the 3 aspects of the sun. I hope nobody's on a cell phone because it would be hard to see. To the very left, you have the central spiritual sun. In the middle, the heart of the sun. To the right, the physical sun. Okay, then all these 7 sacred planets are outposts of this sun, and they are the chakra centers. And all the rays are not given, but basically Vulcan is a first ray center, Saturn a third ray, Venus 2.5, Uranus 1.7. No attempt here to make this chart because it would require too much graphic, and you can find that information at the very top. You'll see these little glyphs. They explain all the different configurations. Anyway, these 7 sacred planets, they pour down through their Antakarana bridge, and they represent these different planes and rays. On the very left, you have ray 1, Shiva, ray 2, Vishnu, Brahma. These are the 7 breaths. These are the building blocks that the Solar Logos is using to create its instrument of expression, its body of manifestation. And when you get to the very bottom, you can see where it says personality on that chart on the left. You see a little figure with the 7 centers. That points to the next chart on the right, in which all the 7 centers and a few subsidiary centers are shown. So in other words, everything macrocosmically on the left chart filters through this little dude right at the bottom, and then he reappears on the right-hand side, and then all these macrocosmic forces work through these microcosmic forces. All esotericism, in all of its many different and diverse divisions and departments, are based on this idea. And these 2 charts, however limited, however inadequate, and maybe even incorrect in certain ways, show at a glance what has to be achieved. Let's shift to the right chart. Where are you on the path? Are you taking the first initiation? There's the triangles outlined for the first initiation to the left on the lower part of the chart. Are you taking the second initiation? Solar plexus to the heart, base of the spine. And then the lower mental triangles, the higher mental triangles, the opening of the heart, opening of the will, and then the egoic lotus radiant in the 1,000 round petaled lotus at the very top. And DK gives instructions for every one of these triangles. And I don't know if it was somebody actually did up a paper on this, and I can't remember their name. And it's important because DK says the most important thing that you need to know is where you are on the path, because with that knowledge, you know what the next step is. It's like me wanting to go to Boston and I'm here in Sacramento. Okay, I know Boston is east. Well, that's a help, but do I know the road system? Do I know the road signs? Do I know the places along the way I can sort of symbolically stop and gather my energies together? This is a map of return, and it's no different than when you were young and you picked up for the first time a road map and you were turning it around and you were saying, whoa, I don't, this is very pretty and I'm very impressed with all this detail, but what does it really mean? How can I use this? And this, of course, alludes to the statement in Buddhism: if you want to know the journey ahead, ask someone who's just come back. And that's why the master, senior initiates, disciples, those in this group, all around us, are contributors to our growth. One question is Thoreau, or was it Emerson, said, one question with the correct answer at the right time in your life can redirect your whole position in which way you're going. And that's just on a mental level. Never mind high aspiration with the emotions or the intuition. Okay, any questions about these charts or up to this point?
We do have a hand. Joe, go ahead.
I start at the beginning. Duane, that number 4 in the left-hand picture takes you into the cosmic, doesn't it?
The number 4 in
Mercury.
Mercury, absolutely. Mercury is the divine intermediary. And because our logos is of the fourth order and the ray of the human kingdom, the soul ray, is the fourth, it's very powerful. And Mercury veils Budai. It links the lower mind to the higher mind and then Budai. And to go back to Maria's statement earlier, it builds the bridge between the three aspects of the mind.
Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Joe, you just raised your hand again. I had lowered it. Okay. No, I don't see any other comments or anything. I mean, there was an earlier comment, and it was the last video, and Susie
That's good.
said that the flower of life appears in that video.
Yes. The flower of life, the solar angel. Isn't it interesting that the soul can also be called an angel? And that's why the Deva evolution is so important, because everything that you see in these charts is made up of Devic substance of one quality or another. Yes, somebody will point out, but doesn't the will of the Father, isn't that even beyond the Deva evolution? In many cases, yes. However, DK says that there are Devas that have gone through the human kingdom, gone through the hierarchy, and are on similar rank with the Chohans and their first ray. And they are Devas. They are our first ray Devas. And they're used for destruction, for breaking down the old, whereas the second ray Devas are for rebuilding the new, and the third ray Devas are giving the substance to do this building, to simplify it. Okay, let's just go ahead. No,
Maria Christina says Mercury is said to be the Antakarana itself, as I recall.
yes, it is a very important. It occupies a very important position because it's the first. It's the manifestation of the first three rays in their minor expression, which is ray 4, 5, 6, and 7. And it's to understand the fourth ray, according to DK, in its higher aspect, you have to be a fourth degree initiate or master. That, we talk about harmony through conflict, and it's important to know it has this dual purpose. It's burning up old karma. It's redirecting us towards the light and towards unconditional love. But its ultimate goal is to seat you in the love of deity. And the second ray, and the fourth ray is the intermediary to the second ray. you go 642 if you're manually along the 246 line. Okay, excellent. Now, let's see if okay, now we're going to have a video. It's going to be a little longer, and it's going to relate what we've just outlined and what science is up to, what's progressive scientific circles, where they're taking all this on their particular level. And it's all about plasma, it's all about vortices. And if you understand all of it, you're a lot more intelligent than I am, because I don't. But I can tell you this, they're onto it, and there are parallels, and we have just outlined potentially where science is going to take this. And it's like Nikolai Tesla resurrected here. And let's see, I have a comment that says, oh, we'll read that afterwards. Okay, so get ready for the video.
Something happens there that's almost supernatural, and I can't claim to know what it is. What I saw can't happen. What I saw is impossible. I'm seeing these scientists, physicists and engineers stuff, they're all scratching their heads, going, okay, we see this, but they've been struggling for a year now to explain what is actually happening. It's almost, not quite, but almost self-perpetuating. And that's it.
Man, and you've seen this.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Wow, buckle up, because what you're about to dive into is nothing short of revolutionary. I'm talking about technology that sounds like it's straight out of a Nikola Tesla fever dream. Yet it's happening right now, and you won't believe it until you hear it all. This isn't just another fringe idea. This is the real deal, something that could fundamentally change how we think about energy, the environment, and maybe even our place in the universe. It's astonishing that this isn't making headlines across the globe. But don't worry, you're in the right place to get the full scoop. You've heard of solids, liquids, and gases, the three states of matter we all learn about in school. But there's a fourth state of matter that's even more fundamental and powerful: plasma. Plasma is what you get when you heat a gas so much that its electrons break free from their atoms, creating a soup of charged particles. This might sound like something exotic, but plasma is actually everywhere. The sun? It's a giant ball of plasma. The beautiful, shimmering northern lights? That's plasma too. So, why is plasma so special? Well, when you have a bunch of charged particles moving around, they can be influenced by magnetic fields, and they can interact in ways that are very different from anything you see in solids, liquids, or gases. Plasma can form complex and stable structures under the right conditions, especially when exposed to specific frequencies. This is where things start to get really interesting. These structures, known as plasmoids, aren't just random blobs. They have a tendency to self-organize into shapes like toroids, a donut-like shape that's stable and incredibly powerful. Now imagine if we could harness this natural property of plasma, if we could create and control these plasmoids for practical uses. This isn't just theoretical science. It's a working technology that's already showing incredible results. The heart of this technology is something called a thunderstorm generator. It's a machine that creates plasmoids by generating microscopic cavitation bubbles in a fluid. These bubbles are then subjected to rapid changes in pressure, vacuum, and compression, which causes them to collapse in on themselves and form perfect toroidal shapes. These plasmoids are then harnessed and used in a system of tubes and cylinders that have been precisely engineered to amplify their energy and efficiency.
Solid, liquid, gas, degrees of freedom between electrons and neutrons, right? Even in a gas, there's still bonds. But when you get to plasma, they completely break free. So now you have electrons, neutrons become ions, and because they're electrically charged, they can be influenced by magnetic fields. And they also have this tendency to self-organize under the right conditions. If you apply the right frequency, It's like they spontaneously organize into toroidal forms. Visualize a sphere with a North Pole and a South Pole. And now let's say you collapse that sphere so that the North Pole and the South Pole meet at the equator. So now you've got this like indentation in the north and the south. They're like cones, right? What then happens is that you get this electron or ion, or both, starts spiraling down that funnel. And as it's spiraling down, it's increasing and increasing in rotational velocity. Now, in the northern hemisphere, say, it's going clockwise, and in the southern, it's going counterclockwise. And they meet at the equatorial plane. And that's where something really interesting happens that I don't understand. You've got this accelerating rotation, faster and faster, coming down literally to the microscopic level. And then those two whirling vortices meet each other. Something happens there that's almost supernatural. And I can't claim to know what it is, but that's the basis of the plasma technology.
One of the most fascinating components of this system is something known as a Hilch vortex tube. This tube can create two vortices, one spinning in one direction and the other spinning in the opposite direction. This setup can actually separate a stream of air into hot and cold ends, with a temperature difference that can reach hundreds of degrees. Imagine feeding in air at room temperature and getting a stream of hot air and a stream of cold air at the other end. This is just one of the amazing feats this technology can achieve. This generator creates powerful energy by bringing together plasmoids moving in opposite directions. When you apply this concept to an internal combustion engine, for example, the results are nothing short of astonishing. Now here's where the story gets really exciting. Randall Carlson, a researcher and scholar known for his work on ancient knowledge and its connections to modern science, got involved with this project. Carlson has spent years exploring how ancient civilizations might have used advanced technologies that we're only beginning to understand today. When he learned about the thunderstorm generator, he was understandably skeptical, but what he saw changed his mind. Carlson was invited to witness a series of tests on this technology, and what he observed was beyond anything he could have imagined. The tests involved two generators, one as a control and the other equipped with a thunderstorm generator. These generators were monitored using a variety of instruments, including mass spectrometers and gas analyzers, to measure the exhaust gases. Initially, the readings were typical for a generator. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other pollutants were present, while oxygen levels were relatively low. But then something extraordinary happened.
And I was present at some of these tests and saw for myself what was happening. A retired admiral from the Indian Navy flew all the way over from India to be there present at this testing that was at a major industrial laboratory at one of the research labs out in Raleigh, North Carolina. But I was there, saw it working, saw two generators, a control generator and one with the technology. I watched as the engineers and the scientists there calibrated them both. And then I was the one who went up and started both generators. They're both in two separate rooms, started the technology on one of the generators. And so we've got readouts. We've got gas analyzers there, probes going up into the exhausts of the generators. We've got a couple of guys there with mass spectrometers hooked up. So we've got multiple ways of determining what's coming out of the exhaust pipes of these two generators. I go up there and I flip the switch. You can sit there, I can watch the mass spectrometer, I can watch the gas analyzer. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and oxygen were in percentages. Methane and nitrogen oxide were in parts per million. So basically, oxygen is like at a 4 or 5% coming out of the exhaust, which is about typical for a generator like that. You got, I think, like 12% of CO2, CO, etc. So as you're watching it, here's what happens. The carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, and nitrogen oxides start going down. Oxygen starts coming up. CO2 zeroes out. Carbon monoxide zeroes out. The nitrogen oxides go down to just a few parts per million, as does the other hydrocarbons. Oxygen tops out at over 20, I don't remember exactly, between 20 and 21%, which is optimum percentage of oxygen for pure unpolluted air. So what is now coming out of the generator with the technology is pure unpolluted air.
No kidding.
On top of that, what it's doing, it's capturing everything that's coming out and it's feeding it back into the thunderstorm generator. So in order to get the plasma separation to occur, I think you have to get it up to like 700 and some degrees. But once you do that, it's almost, not quite, but almost self-perpetuating. And you just have to replenish the water. Like I forget, however few hundred hours that it runs, you have to replenish the water. And that's it.
Man, and you've seen this.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. And I've known, multiple people now that have seen it. The Admiral, he took it back to India. India is seriously looking at it and as a retrofit for their Navy. The big industrial scale application on the 300 kilowatt Perkins generator on the substation in London. I mean, they're testing it, and they may start retrofitting all of their because it doubles to triples the efficiency.
Let's pause for a moment to really appreciate what this means. We're talking about a technology that can be retrofitted onto existing engines, whether in cars, power plants, or industrial machinery, that not only makes them more efficient, but also eliminates harmful emissions. Instead of pumping pollutants into the atmosphere, these engines could actually purify the air. Imagine what this could mean for cities choked by smog, or for industries struggling to meet environmental regulations. It's a game changer, but how does it work? That's the million-dollar question, and even the scientists involved are still trying to fully understand it. What seems to be happening is that the plasmoids created by the thunderstorm generator are inducing a kind of transmutation at the atomic level. The harmful pollutants in the exhaust are somehow being converted into harmless or even beneficial substances, with oxygen being one of the primary byproducts. This isn't just filtration or scrubbing, it's a fundamental transformation of matter. This technology doesn't stop at cleaning the air. The implications are much broader. For example, there's potential for applications in space travel, where managing energy and resources efficiently is critical. Imagine spacecraft equipped with this technology, able to convert waste into useful energy or even breathable air. Or consider submarines, which operate in environments where air quality is a constant concern. With this technology, they could potentially stay submerged longer and operate more efficiently. And it doesn't stop there. The inventor and those working with him are exploring even more ambitious possibilities. One idea that's been floated is the conversion of hydrocarbon-based pollution in the oceans into protein. This could have enormous implications for environmental cleanup and even food production. The potential applications of this technology are vast, and we're only scratching the surface. Now let's talk a bit about the history of this technology and how it came to light. The inventor, who has been working on this for years, realized early on that what he was dealing with was something extraordinary, but he also knew that revolutionary technologies like this often face significant resistance, whether from established industries, regulatory bodies, or even from the scientific community itself. We've seen this story before with other groundbreaking inventions. Think of Nikola Tesla's work on wireless energy or Stanley Meyer's water-powered car engine. These technologies were either suppressed or forgotten, buried by the weight of skepticism and vested interests. To avoid this fate, the inventor decided to take a different approach. Instead of keeping his work secret or seeking traditional patents, he decided to open source everything. He spent years documenting his research, writing up notes, schematics, and diagrams, and preparing to share it all with the world. The idea was simple. By making the technology available to everyone, he could ensure that it wouldn't be buried or suppressed. Anyone with the skills and resources could replicate and build upon his work, pushing the technology forward in ways that might not be possible if it were controlled by a single entity. Randall Carlson played a crucial role in bringing this technology to the public's attention. He mentioned it during a conversation on the Joe Rogan Experience, one of the most popular podcasts in the world. This was a significant moment because it marked the first time that this information was shared with a large audience. The response was overwhelming. People were fascinated by the idea that a technology like this could exist and that it might have connections to ancient knowledge and practices.
And you think that they had this back in ancient times?
Some iteration of it, I suspect. When you create these vortexes, you start this spiral motion inside the sphere, and then it travels down. So you got an outer cylinder and an inner cylinder. And one vortex is inside the outer, but outside the inner. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then the next vortex going in the opposite direction, and the opposite spin is inside the next cylinder.
Okay.
Now, in order to transition from, like if you have a sphere and you just cut a round hole in it and you stick a cylinder onto it, it's got this like sharp edge, and that would induce turbulence that would affect this coherent, organized vortex that forms. So you have to have a transition between the cylinder and the sphere to prevent that turbulence from being introduced. Experimentation has shown that one angle seems to be optimum for minimizing the introduction of the turbulence. What do you think that angle is? 51.84 degrees. Slope to base of Khufu's pyramid. Another coincidence? I don't know. But that leads me to think, okay, I've suspected all along that these pyramids and these structures are part of an ancient technological system.
Before Carlson's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, Mazda, the well-known car manufacturer, had already expressed interest in this plasma technology. The inventor had been working with Mazda and had even signed a non-disclosure agreement with them to explore the potential applications of the technology. However, Carlson wasn't fully aware of this agreement when he mentioned the technology on the podcast. This led to some unexpected complications, as revealing the technology publicly could have interfered with ongoing discussions and agreements. Shortly after the podcast aired, Carlson received a call from Roland Perry, one of Australia's best-selling authors and an investigative reporter with high-level connections. Perry informed Carlson that by mentioning the technology on the podcast, he had inadvertently outed the inventor, potentially putting the entire project at risk. There was concern that this sudden exposure could lead to backlash or attempts to suppress the technology. But as it turned out, the publicity had an unexpected positive effect. Within a few days, Mazda's stock price actually went up, showing that there was strong interest in the potential of this technology.
When I was there at this testing, I'm seeing these scientists, physicists and engineers stuff, they're all scratching their heads, going, okay, we see this, but they've been struggling for a year now to explain what is actually happening. There's a fellow by the name of Bob Grenier, who I think has probably come as close as anybody. He's head of the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. Martin Fleischmann was one of the pioneers in these alternative energies, particularly working with plasma. Brilliant mind. He came on board about a year ago. And he was there was a Tesla Tech conference in last summer in Albuquerque. My pal and partner in HowTube.com did the live streaming out to a couple of thousand people around the world that paid to be able to witness. And what they did in front of a live audience on a stage is they brought in a generator and retrofitted it right there. As a result of that, several things happened. From there, it went to this research lab in North Carolina. From there, it went to a conference in Zurich where it was presented. Malcolm then went and spent 2 months in India demonstrating and building prototypes. So, I mean, this is the phase where it's at now. There's a really interesting video that I would recommend watching. It's an interview with the gentleman is named George Lush. He works in high performance metals. He contracts, he's third generation. Their company, I think, was founded in 1951. He's contracts to the aerospace industry and NASA and all of this, these high performance alloys and stuff. And he did the annealing of this thunderstorm generator in England. And there's an interview, like a 20-minute interview with him afterwards. And it's really worth watching because he says, I'm the biggest skeptic around. And what I saw can't happen. What I saw is impossible, but I saw it. He's there with his, he had a thermal analyzer. we've got videos of him here and there testing as this stream of stuff is moving through these cylinders and pipes and stuff. And literally with 4 inches, the temperature can change by over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And he says, this is impossible. He says, I kept testing and testing and testing with my thermal analyzer, and it came up the same every time. He says, we're just at the beginning of trying to figure out what the hell is happening here. But then he went in to discuss the potential applications of it. Now, one of the big questions is okay, when you do look at these readouts, okay, carbon dioxide, the other things go down. In some cases, zero out. In other cases, it doesn't zero out entirely, but it's only a small fraction of what it had been. Meanwhile, the oxygen's gone up. So then the question, okay, where did the carbon dioxide go? Where did the carbon monoxide go? Well, it looks like it somehow got transmuted on the atomic level into oxygen. And how bizarre that the concentration of oxygen coming out of the exhaust pipes is the optimum oxygen that we would want for unpolluted, breathable air. And that's what's coming out. And George Howard was there. He got down with his mouth right there and started huffing the plasmoids or whatever coming out, to show, yeah. He did the same thing at the Tesla Tech conference in Albuquerque. We've got it on video, him getting down there and huffing. It's a running joke now. And they initially started up the generator on the stage, and once the generator got warmed up, the fumes coming out got so strong that they had to move the generator out onto the loading dock. Then they turned the technology on. And within a few minutes, instead of all this pollutant and stuff coming out, it's air.
The story of this technology is still unfolding, and there's much more to learn. But one thing is clear. This is a discovery with the potential to change the world. It's a story that combines the wisdom of the ancients with the cutting-edge science of today, and it's opening up possibilities that we're only just beginning to understand. In conclusion, what you've just heard is more than just an interesting tale. It's a glimpse into a future where technology could transform our relationship with the environment, with energy, and with each other. The thunderstorm generator is just the beginning. As we continue to explore the possibilities of plasma technology and its connections to ancient knowledge, who knows what other discoveries we might make? The future is bright, and it's up to us to embrace these new technologies, to push the boundaries of what we think is possible, and to create a world where science and technology work in harmony with nature. Whether you're a scientist, an engineer, or just someone who cares about the future of our planet, this is a moment to get involved, to stay curious, and to help bring this technology out of the shadows and into the light. The possibilities are endless, and the journey is just beginning.
Quite a video. And I think what they're doing is tapping into the etheric. And the etheric plane is doing this transmutation and this so-called magic. In other words, when you have a conventional scientist who's been trained all their adult life in one type of understanding, and suddenly they're presented with something potentially new, it can be very disorientating. And this, of course, was the difficulty Tesla had with his inventions. And, the government seized all of his research when he checked out at the end of his incarnation. But I find it interesting that when you study the ageless wisdom, at least along the Jawal Kool line, he really speaks a lot about the vortex. And he speaks about vortexes going in opposite directions. And in the middle, where that line or point of Fohat is sort of tapping into a much higher level. And the question, of course, is how does it work? And it's not working, by any known principles that conventional science understands. Anyway, let's open it up for any comments or questions.
Okay, we have several. Diana says this new plasma technology offers a panorama of applications for forms, perhaps a preliminary to familiarizing ourselves with the world of non-form or vehicles more subtle than our cosmic physical. Maybe a transitional passage as an etheric bridge.
Oh, I think she's nailed it, Diana. Yeah, it's subtle, the bridge to the subtle. I mean, it's performing something miraculous, but in true science, there are no miracles. There's 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 a dynamic that we just don't fully understand. And let's take electricity, which was introduced, let's say hypothetically 100 years ago, or maybe longer. Do we really understand electricity? I don't know. We can talk about electricity, but what is it? And yet we use it every day. It's so common, it's just acceptable. Well, how many other areas of research or penetration are we going to find, as DK says, into the fourth etheric subplane, where we're going to tap onto unlimited forms of energy, like being able to farm this instead of farming vegetables, instead of creating generators that create magnetism and electricity, we could create these alternative machines that could farm plasma, as the video sort of opens with. Why can't we farm these higher levels? I mean, look at the potency of a strike of lightning. Imagine if you could put that in a jar or put it in some huge constructed dwelling. You'd have enough energy to go on for a long time. So I think this just demonstrates that there's a lot of research going on. And I don't know about the pyramids. I'm apt to be a little skeptical when people make all these analogies between physics and some ancient dwelling, but I'm open. And, I'm going to do more research on this. Are there any additional comments?
Yes. Okay. So Joe says, I'm thinking electric energy meets friction and creates solar energy, or perhaps more logically, ray 1 plus ray 2 equals creative energy ray 3.
This is a very important statement because when you study the ageless wisdom, when you study the elemental kingdoms, the Deva kingdoms, you realize that light is the result of friction. In other words, when Fohat sends a stream of powerful will energy down this conduit, or what we call the Antakarana bridge, it 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 has resistance as it passes down through the different planes. And when you're able to reduce the resistance to a minimum level, then whatever magic, whatever white magic you're attempting to do will be effortless. In other words, our three lower bodies are made of elemental substance. The soul is of more of the angelic and the Davic kingdom. So when the soul impacts the three lower bodies, it causes friction, it causes light, it also causes discomfort. And that's why everybody isn't signing up to do advanced occult work, because it requires discipline. It requires holding oneself in a point of tension that may be temporarily uncomfortable. But during that moment of tension or discomfort, that is the higher angelic entities transforming, regenerating the lower elemental substance so it no longer repels. Friction is the result of two different types of polarities repelling, and yet it can be harvested. That light that is the result of friction, to go back to what Joe was saying, Greg was saying, the you can actually tap into the differential of certain energies. Well, let's look at a weather system. What's more powerful than a hurricane or a tornado? Especially, we've just had two. What do you have? You have a hot and wet and cold and dry weather systems come together. They cannot cancel each other out, but they attempt to. Two different types of a weather system. So what do? When they meet, they turn upon themselves. What happens when they turn upon themselves? They generate at the very center tremendous potency, and that potency can mow down buildings, it can destroy towns, and there is an occult parallel. Everything is vortical in the occult world, and if you learn how to manipulate these vortices, you are learning white magic on a superhuman physical level. And okay, Heidi, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. The only thing that I'd like to say here is that it is my understanding that when you're aligned with the divine will, and I'll put it in that phraseology, and you're able to hold that point of tension for as life is evolving actually through that point of attention, through that point of tension, then what happens is all of those lower vehicles become in service to exactly the purpose that one has incarnated for. And yeah, that's all I would like to say, but I really wanted to just, and it's a process, and it's the willingness to continue when it's difficult that actually helps. And then in particular, in these particular times that we're in, where there's a tremendous amount of downpouring from the solar logos, it actually has the potential of opening up these portals, which is actually what's happening with these downloads of information. But the more that we can stay aligned, the more that we actually evolve humanity simultaneously. Humanity actually becomes an evolving force in this time. Anyway, I don't have anything more. I just really wanted to say.
Excellent. That's excellent. And that's a beautiful description of the process. Because when you're in a point of tension, it means that you're dealing with more than one energy, and that you're trying to reconcile or allow the higher to reconstruct and rearrange the atomic substance of the lower. Somewhere in one of the Dina books, DK goes into this with one of his disciples, at least if my memory is correct. And he says that he explains it generically this way. This is sort of a paraphrase. He says that the first initiation, you have to have a 25% high quality atomic substance in your vehicles. At the second initiation, 50%. At the third initiation, 75%. So it's white magic has a mathematical side to it. And just as geometry, color, sound, vibration, and when you can take a higher overarching entity like the monad or the solar angel, and you are able to bring it down into the lower vehicles, this is the law of transmutation. This is the law of service, where a higher entity is taking its, and these words are wholly inadequate here, taking its greater life and maybe even diminishing it in some very small way to save a lesser life that's trapped in these lower dimensions. Remembering the quote from DK, who said, until the third initiation, you have to consider yourself a prisoner of the planet, a prisoner of your three lower vehicles, because at the third initiation, you have transmutated enough of the atoms, and atoms exist in all the bodies. It's not just the physical, it's the etheric, the astral, the low mental. They're made up of different quality or levels or types of light, which are atoms. So thank you, Heidi. That was excellent.
The only other
Any addition?
Yeah, the only other thing I just wanted to add was after you were speaking, the other way I might verbalize this or articulate it in two words is that is when the personality actually recognizes itself as its true self, and it is in service to that. So the personality itself and all of the personal impulses, and that's kind of how I would put it, the personal impulses actually begin to track towards the one who is its true nature, its true essence, its true beingness, and its true essential nature. So it's almost like all of those impulses, which we can listen to in our lower bodies, but when our ears are now tuning, or our vehicles are attuned to those higher vehicles, then it becomes less efforting at that point, because there's an attunement that has a quality that allows that process to happen, and it doesn't happen from the same point of tension anymore. Anyway, that's it. Sorry.
Excellent. A couple more comments and we'll wrap this up.
Okay. Diana says it opens the possibility to control the atmospheres during extraplanetary exploration.
Yes. Imagine,
And,
oh, go ahead.
oh no, sorry. I thought you were
No,
going to.
go
I
ahead.
was going to read a next one.
Read it. Thank you.
Sam says, excellent information. And Susie says that reminds me of what trees do for us. So let's keep our
Yes.
rainforests.
That's so true.
Oh, wow, we got 11. All right. Vivian says, do we even understand photosynthesis?
Exactly. These huge miracles that are happening under our feet as we walk over the lawn in our front yard.
DK says, oh, Chris says, DK says astrology is the most exact of all sciences.
Yes. The oldest and the most exacting. But I will add to that, DK, and this is a direct quote from Alice Bailey in The Reappearance of the Christ. I have it right here on my wall. The mystery of electricity contains within its formulas and teachings the key to the science which will unlock the mystery of electricity, the greatest spiritual science and area of divine knowledge in the world, the fringes of which have only just been touched upon. So imagine combining the oldest and the most esoteric of the sciences, which is astrology, fusing it with the newest, one of the newest esoteric sciences. And that's what we're trying to do a little of here, but they're both a vast subject. Okay, one last one and we'll decompress.
Okay. Cecily says the tension is the emerging creative consciousness being stepped down to developing, expanding human consciousness. I experienced this serving in San Jose, California, aka Silicon Valley, aka the Valley of Heart's Delight.
Silicon Valley is right on a fault line, and when the sun is active, it has a reciprocal effect on the interior of our planet. And they've proven scientifically there's far more activity with the plates shifting when there's a lot of solar activity. Yeah, no, there are places where certain types of energies are really powerful. And in Silicon Valley, that's seventh ray, fifth ray, woo. And you get LA, which is the heart center. Okay, well, thank you all for your patience and your contribution. And please go in and look around at some of these links that we've made if you're so inclined, and you can bring them up in the next meeting. And I would simply close with the wonderful words of H.P. Blavatsky, who used to say in her esoteric teachings, you are sons, and you have to always remind yourself, you're not this feeble bag of protoplasm limping through life. You are a son, and you have available these 7 breaths, these 7 rays, these 7 planes. They're your field of play if you take the time, if you learn the science. So thank you so much. And I send my love and light and look forward to our next meeting.
Okay, I just want to say that I will post the chat messages. There were several more chat messages that we didn't have time to get to, and I will post those, and I'll do it as a Word document so the links that were put in there can be activated. That will all be with the recordings along with the individual clip link to those that Duane gave us and a copy of the slides and everything. So I just wanted you all to know that. The next, these Awakening the Higher Mind and Intuition, they're always the second Saturday of the month. Duane, for November, we're fixing to change to standard time again, but we never change the GMT version of this, right? So
Thank you.
everybody who changes out of daylight time, no matter where in the world you are, you'll have to adjust accordingly to the difference between GMT. Okay. So
Thank you so much, BL.
thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Love and light.